Hello, my name is Ricardo Marin. I am a film journalist based in Mexico City. Welcome to this year's 2020 10th edition of Festival Internacional de Cine de Guadalajara in LA, now the Guadalajara Film Festival in Los Angeles. Thank you to our supporting organizations. The festival's new mission is to show the best of Latin American cinema and open doors for emerging Latino creators with the intention to cultivate a borderless film industry. I'm here to talk with the directors of Zero Impunity. Here today with us, Nicolas Blayes, director, and also director Stefan Weber Blayes. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing those names correctly, by the way.
It's perfect.
Perfectly good.
Thank you. Well, welcome. Thank you very much for your time. I guess I would like to begin this session of questions by asking you about your backgrounds and what was your interest in the style of journalistic filmmaking that is presented here in Zero Impunity.
Our backgrounds are very different. From Nicolas, for example, came from the music side of cinema, and I came from edition, literature, etc. But about Zero Impunity, we are not journalists, but we Nicolas and me, but we work on sexual violences for many years now. 10 years ago, we did a little short about female pedophilia, for example. And now we start with Zero Impunity, a kind of trilogy about sexual violence. And Zero Impunity will be the first part of this trilogy. We are interested in this subject for personal reasons, but also because we are now fathers, specifically from two daughters, and gender equality, sexual violences are topics who are very interesting to us specifically.
Yes, and all started with Zero Impunity when our producer Marion Gut met survivors in Rwanda 5 years, 6 years ago, and a woman testimonied to Marion, and she told her that if she had to speak in a documentary or something like this, it will be important for her to be heard, because it's the only way for her to be protected, because voices who spread can protect her. So when Marion came back in Luxembourg and told us about this connection with this survivor, we decided to start a project about sexual violences in Warzone, in which we can imagine a new way to create a kind of hybrid film in which we can mix journalism, of course, but also animation and activism. And we wanted to create a movie in the crossroads of these three.
Okay. Of course, Zero Impunity is a show of all these things that you just mentioned, Stan, for example. So I'd like to ask now, Zero Impunity isn't just a documentary. It's also the name of a social project, and it's also the name of a transmedia part. I'd like to ask what are the many aspects that globe up Zero Impunity that are not just the documentary?
Mm-hmm. But first, the first piece of this global project is the investigations we made with 12 female journalists, French one from the collective You Press in France, in Paris. With them, we chose, with Nicolas and the You Press collective, we chose 6 different areas where we can investigate to do our project, but also our film. So we choose the area you can see in the film. So, for example, what happened in Guantanamo, what happened in Syria, in Central Africa with the French army, in Ukraine, etc. And they started to do the investigations. We also find 12 media partners around specifically Europe, for example, Mediapart in France or InfoLibre in Spain. And with them, we launched these investigations. It was beginning of 2017.
And Yes, we published these investigative reports on 6 different languages.
Yes.
Yeah.
On this media. And in the same time when this investigation were made, but also launched, Nicolas and me, we were writing the film based on testimonies, etc. You can find in the investigation. But what happened in the same times when the investigation were launched is that we get a lot of comments on the social media. For example, people saying that what we are saying in the investigation is not the truth. Bashar al-Assad cannot do this to his own people. What happened in Guantanamo, it's not true. We also get some threats from US soldier or French soldier during this time. And so with Nicolas, we decided to go back on the same fields, same area as our journalist, and in the goal to speak with people there, ask them why they don't believe in it, why they don't agree, and if they agree with us, if they wanted to support us, we shoot them and create this artistic performance you can see in the film. And that's why the film after this was 50-50 live action and animation. So the film is the art of the project. And the third part is the actions we made based on the citizen support, specifically from now in Europe. We get around 500,000 citizens support. And with this support, with this media pressure, we put pressure on different governments to change laws, to act concretely. So this is the three parts of the project: investigation, the film, and concrete actions.
Would you like to add something? Okay. Okay. Um, I wanted to ask, before knowing that this was a trilogy, I wanted to ask what if there was something else for the project, because I felt I wasn't really sure if this project meant sort of a end note to the project, or to this segment of a project, or what did it signify. So my question basically is, what are going to be the next installments of this project? How are they going to be similar or different to Zero Impunity?
Yes, with Zero Impunity, we wanted to explore something very direct, because the film is really is first based on facts, but also it's strongly a filmmaker also vision. So we explore the hybridation within journalism and animation with this first film. But for the next film, which is called Ghost Dance, we want to explore the fiction. So it will be an animated feature film, but not based on journalism or something like this. We really want to explore something more poetic, more sensitive, and more based on strong narration. And the third part of the trilogy will be another exploration, because we want to do a feature film, not animated, but a feature film based on a more personal experience of the topic. So really the trilogy is for us a way to explore in 3 different ways the topic.
It's for us, it's also important to do this trilogy. As just said Nicolas, yes, the third part of the trilogy will be more personal. So we see also this trilogy like a kind of personal therapy, to make things go out from us about this topic. So it was very important to start with Zero Impunity, something very global, something very activist, with a journalist approach, to go to something more personal. That's, yeah.
Okay. Now, these the stories that are found in Zero Impunity, they're very harrowing. They're very they light a very important issue that is sometimes not often talked about. Now, I know you worked with organizations like UPress, I'm sure. How did you decide on the stories, and how did these stories come about? Did the journalists present them to you, and how many stories were presented, for example? How is that process like?
It was important for us from the beginning to speak only about current war zone. That was the first thing. The second one, we wanted to explore the definition of sexual violences with the 6 different stories. We can have a global overview of what are sexual violences. So that was really important for us to do that. And the third point is also that we wanted to connect all these stories with the Western point of view. I mean, we are connected to this, to what happens in these stories. It's not happening far away from France or far away from the United States. We are connected to these crimes, and we wanted to question that.
We are responsible also for these crimes, and we have to talk about. It's normal, but also yes, our goal, yes, as just said Nicolas, was to give a global definition of what is sexual violences, because if we want to fight against impunity, we have to know exactly what we are talking about. And sexual violences are not only rapes in some wars. It's also what's happening in Guantanamo. It's also forced prostitution, for example. I know it's not something obvious for everyone that forced prostitution is also a sort of sexual violences in war zone, because a lot of people say, no, you cannot compare it with a rape in a war. For us, yes, you have to, because if you don't, you cannot have the global overview of what is sexual violences, and this is something bad if you want to fight against impunity.
Yes, that is a very important aspect that I found in the documentary. Obviously, there is a problem as to how sexual violence affects women, especially in war zones. But the documentary is not just about how it affects women; it's also about how it affects men, about how it affects children, and about how this there's like this passed down culture almost that comes almost in a chain of command sort of way. So how did you approach this part of the problem? How did you make this part of the issue so important? How did you underline the fact that it's not just about how it affects women, which is very important? I wouldn't like to erase that fact, but it's also completely widespread.
We wanted to explore that in the narration of the film. From the first part of the film to the end, we are going through and through. We are going from a personal story to a more global approach. So we start with the Syrian case, with the story of these children in Syria, and we finish the movie with the UN case. So in the movie, we are diving into this mechanic of impunity. So that's why we choose these testimonies. We don't use all the materials we had in the investigative reports, because of course it's too much. We really focus on specific stories to dive into the mechanic.
And it was also important to us to yes, as just you said, to show that it happens mainly, yes, of course, 80%, even more, to women, of course, but also to men and to children. And it was important for us to show it, because it also give to the audience a clue about the fact that sexual violences are some kind of weapon during a war. It's a weapon. Because if you only show, it's bad to say that, but it's a fact also. If you want to only show what happens to women, people will think maybe it's something based on the man and woman relation. No, it's a war. It's a weapon. Sexual violences are using as a weapon, and showing it through example with men and children we can see it more clearly, in my opinion, in our opinion.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to a topic you raised, Stan, regarding the different stratuses of power that are involved in this issue. The film bridges this problem really smoothly between the commonplace the commonplace problem that happens to victims and the problems that happen in the higher echelons of power, all the way to the Oval Room in the White House. So my question right now is, how did this synthesis happen? Because it has to be synthesized. What stories did you leave out? What was the main focus to bridge this gap in a more efficient manner?
It's not an easy question. It was not easy to do that, of course, because there is different level of responsibility. I mean, the soldiers on the field have the same responsibility as the chief commander, etc., etc. But at the end, I don't know. I mean, we did it very intuitive. It was really intuitive. I mean, intuitively. But what we really wanted to show is that to fight against impunity, we need to have people who free their speech. And to free their speech, people, the survivors, or even the whistleblowers, have to feel secure to do that. So they have to understand that the people all around you are able to listen to you. And that's also what we wanted to show in the movie. I think it's really important to understand that I will only speak if I feel secure to do that. And I will feel secure to do that only if people around me listen me and say, okay, what happens to you? It's not normal. It's not normal. So yes, I can listen to you. And then we can start fighting against impunity and to find exactly who are responsible for what exactly.
Also, what you have to understand in the film, it's based on the investigations. Nicolas and me, we took in the investigation, testimonies, etc. But the global narrative of the film is an outer point of view, so our point of view. So it means with a point of view with all the author's subjectivity. And it was important for us to do it like this because we are not journalists and we assume it. We are authors. So the film is in a very brutal approach with no compromising. And we did so because we are authors and not journalists. And that's why we synthesize, yes, not a good word, the way in this way also, in an auto approach.
That's great. Now, I didn't want to leave out a very important topic in this Q&A, which is the form. It's very drawing, the way and which it was made, which you mentioned at the beginning of the Q&A, which is the 50-50 part, 50% live action, 50% animation. What drew me most from the live action, at least, was the projecting side of it, the projecting part of into buildings, of these interviews that happen with journalists, or these videos that happen with people. Projecting something onto a building is an act in and of itself. It's a performative act in and of itself. How did that how did that come up to you? How did you say that? How did you think that this was the option to massively to diffuse this to make this problem more known?
We used this technique before, just before to do the film in the written session. When the investigations were launched, we did such a performance in the streets of Paris, in the front of the buildings, the parliament, the French parliament, etc., to give a word to the President Emmanuel Macron in France and to ask him to take care about our demand and specifically about having trainee courses about sexual violences in a military school. So it works because we did this performance in Paris. We record it and we put it on YouTube, and we had we did a little buzz in France because of this. And after this, we had a meeting with Emmanuel Macron team and the Ministry of Defense. And so we did it like this, and then we decided also to do it in the film to show the citizens' commitment.
Yeah, it was a really strong experience for us as filmmakers, and we did it with the French artist Olivier Crouzel, and we did it in France, of course, in Ukraine, we did it in the United States, and it was really interesting to discuss first with people on the streets, and then to ask them if they wanted to show their support in their own city, in a public space. To put your face like this in the big buildings is a strong commitment. I think it's very brave, and it's very. What we wanted to show is we wanted to show to survivors that people support us, and I think it's really important to do that.
Yeah.
And how was the response, like the live response? You can sometimes see people staring at the projections, but how did you find that that approach outside the movie, of course?
Yeah, we had different kind of approach, but you know, we live in a world with a lot of lights everywhere, advertising everywhere. So when you project some kind of these pictures on buildings, a lot of people don't care. They just look, and then maybe they start to listen, and okay. But it was really strange. A lot of people were very interesting and committed, and other people didn't care about that.
But we did it also, all this projection, we did it without authorization. It was important for us to hack the public space without authorization because it's also in the spirit of the project. For example, where we were in Jordan, we were in Amman, so the capital of the country, and there the secret services were following us during all our journey there, and even our fixer was in prison the day before we came because they asked him, "What are you doing here? Why are you trying to do this kind of projection on our wall, etc., etc." So when we came, they followed us and they forbidden us always to project our character on the building in Amman. And so we decided to go in the desert. And that's the picture you can see in the film when we project these beautiful faces on the mountain of the desert. It made beautiful footage, but it means also something. It means that, of course, these voices has to be in desert because they cannot be heard in the city in the front of everyone because there is a kind of censorship. So the different countries has different kind of performance, and it means something different always.
And these parts of the story of you being followed by Secret Service is very very strange. Very it sounds very dangerous. Did you ever think of was your safety ever put into compromise, like maybe in the Donbass region in Jordan somewhere?
No, it was very it was safe to us. No, the projection were safe mainly. What was more dangerous in a way was when the investigations were launched and the threats we get by email, etc. Very, for example, some US soldier told us that we don't have to go to the US because they will kill us if we come, something like that. So it was very. This part was more tricky than the performance part.
Okay.
And we lost also big media partners For example, a big French media partners, because they were interested by the project, but they didn't want to be part of the project in the project because we have these French investigative reports. We also have censorship in some festivals. That's why we are very proud and very happy to be here with you, because each festival who right now select the film and screen the film to the audience, I think they are very brave in a way, because honestly, many festivals didn't do that for political reasons. So it's also part of the project.
And they told us that it was for political reasons. For example, some festivals very liked the film, and they said us that it's a very good film. They select the film in official competition, and a few days just before, they call us and they said, no, okay, we cannot take it because we will do specifically this year a partnership with the UN, and we don't want to screen your film in the front of the UN. So there is a lot of this kind of situation happens during the last year. That's why, just as Nicolas said, we are very, very proud to be here. And for us, every festival who takes the film is courageous as hell. So yes, so that's why thank you very much.
You approached a very important topic, which our time is running out, and so I'd like to wrap up with this. The film makes a very important implication and a very important point, which is that basically authorities know about this problem, and they are at best negligent about it, and sometimes even worse. So my question is to you. Why do you think this problem hasn't really been addressed or executively solved in a more powerful manner than it has been right now? Does it have to do with the shame which you mentioned in the movie? Does it have to do with any other concept? What is your opinion on this?
If do a film about it, it means for a filmmaker or even a society to say my army or some others army, specifically West Army, are bad people. They can do bad things. No, they're not bad people. They can do bad things. So it's always something very tricky to for citizens to say my own army can do bad things in Central Africa, in Africa in general, or in everywhere in the world. So and in the specific context we live right now, specifically in Europe with the terrorism, etc., it's very, very, very difficult for specifically for French citizens to say, okay, my army do bad things, and at the same time they have to protect me against terrorism. So for people, it's like being, yes, it's not possible for them to think like this. So that's why I think this kind of topic is very difficult to be listened.
Yeah, and for survivors, it's all about shame, of course, and for the family of the survivors and the friends, etc. That's why for us, each people who watch this movie can do something, even if they are not an activist, even if they are not a doctor, if they are not a lawyer or filmmaker, anything. You can only learn to listen to the others. And if you learn to listen to somebody, they will speak more. And if they speak more, it's the beginning of fighting against impunity. Yeah. So that's also the message of the film.
Well, thank you very much, Stéphane, Nicolas. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us in this streaming edition of the Guadalajara Film Festival. Follow us on our website, ficginla.com, and on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at ficginla. See you later. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.